Hello, today is June 21st, 2016, and this is a CFTA-hosted webinar to welcome new business partner Sendem to our association. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available via the CFTA YouTube station. If anyone, while watching the webinar, does have any questions they'd like to ask, feel free to submit those using the questions dialog box in the go-to webinar tools. And at the end of the webinar, we'll go ahead and take those one by one. With that, I would like to go ahead and welcome our presenter today, John McLean with Sendem. He will be presenting on the Sendem Solutions, who is a facilities document management solutions provider, and they offer a leading software in this market. John, very happy to have you part of CFTA. Welcome.
Thank you. Great. Well, I'll go ahead and get started. Just briefly about me. My background is mechanical engineering, actually. Was assigned to work in the Air Force as an engineering officer and did a lot of facilities, got into facilities management in that role. After the Air Force, I was with Turner and got involved in a project at Turner to actually create a better solution to turn over all those documents, all those as-built drawings, O&M manuals, warranties, record documents that are generated in the course of construction. And I've kind of had my teeth in that problem, working on solving that problem since 2006. So that's kind of my perspective on this. And this is what I'd like to tell you about today, a little bit about our company, Sendem, my take on lifecycle facilities document management, overview of our solution, kind of a challenge as to where everybody is now on the curve of managing their documents, and a demo. And then an example of how we can help clients get started, and then open it up to questions. Shouldn't be more than half hour, 40 minutes or so. So I'll go ahead and get started. So Sendem, we are an IT solutions company here in Cincinnati, Ohio. And when I say solutions, what I mean is we don't only create software for our clients, but we can help folks with supporting that software, populating that software with information. If something like a facility solution doesn't have data about the building, about the equipment in the building, about the documents that go to the building, and you don't have the folks to put that in, we can help with that. And Facilify actually came, like I mentioned, from Turner. Turner wanted to strictly focus on construction, so they're partnering with Sendem, which is a IT company, to make the solution better. And so it's kind of nice. I have the background of the construction and experience we have from Turner, but now we're bringing it into a software company who can take the software to the next level and keep it more current. And we're a dedicated business unit in Sendem to do that. We also, by the way, can really provide any type of Microsoft SharePoint services, and you'll see how that ties into our product. Our product is actually built on top of SharePoint, makes SharePoint friendly for the facilities manager. We're a certified MBE as well, if that assists anybody in the purchasing decision-making process. So facilities document management is a huge issue for folks, especially in your campus setting. We find that's one of the biggest needs, where you have 50, 100, maybe even more buildings that have been built over 50 years, 100 years. There's a lot of paper documents still floating around that may need to be kept. They may or may not ever be digitized, but then these days there's more digital coming in different forms, AutoCAD, PDF. And the question is, how do you structure all that, and how do you make it available for folks to make it useful for decision making and management going into the future? The folks like the engineers need that to design the next project. The facilities guys need that to reference things like O&M manuals and trace out lines. How do you keep that all organized? Especially if it's scattered all over the place. Maybe there's an individual that's very organized and has made an effort to put it on their computer, or made a nice library in their office, but it can't be shared, or it's only for electrical or mechanical. And the other thing is, this data and documentation gets stale if it's not updated. If a building was built 5 years ago, it's pretty much guaranteed that the documentation turned over is probably no longer up to date if nobody took the effort to go ahead and update it with new project information. And it's not only new contract construction that will affect it, but in-house work. Work crew comes in on a work order and moves a wall around, changes lighting fixtures. If that's not documented, the documentation starts to become useless. So, and it's a challenge to get really folks to focus on it, to set aside the time and the budget to fix the problem. Just organizational inertia. So, I'll touch on some thoughts on that as well. So, with that in mind, we set out to create a solution called Facilify that takes into account the needs of the life cycle of facilities document management. Documents are created as things start to move past programmatic stage. Architects start to sketch ideas of what buildings should look like. Moves into construction stage where the documents are detailed enough for folks to bid on. At the end of construction stage, there'll be a snapshot taken of that building, essentially the as-built and the record documents, but also the operations and maintenance manuals, those warranties, reports, commissioning data, things that are very important that are essentially the owner's manual for the building. And it's not like a car where you can go get an owner's manual for a Toyota Corolla or a Chevy truck. It's a unique owner's manual just for that building, and if you lose the information, you're probably never going to find it again unless you spend a lot of money to recreate it. As buildings are used, changes take place. In-house changes, project changes, not only major things like wings being added, but minor in-house renovations, equipment changeouts. There has to be a way to keep the documentation current. And there could be other technologies that are linking into that. It could be CAFM, CMMS. I know CAFM's a big emphasis for the group here. And CMMS, maintenance management, you may get some 3D files. So it's not a snapshot. Documentation can't only be a snapshot. It has to be living, breathing. It has to be a process to update it. So I talked to a lot of folks sort of all along the spectrum of how they're set up in terms of document management. Some they have a paper library, same as they've had for the last 50 years. There's somebody comes in a couple times a week, tries to organize it, has an elaborate card catalog system to find things, and if that person got hit by a bus, they'd be in big trouble. Sometimes things are starting to get organized along department lines where maybe the engineering department has a library, maybe the folks in facilities management have a library, more of the O&M manuals, but still it's not really integrated, and if the facilities folks want to see the latest building drawings, they might have to go through a couple hoops to get to them. The engineering folks have no method to get to the operations and maintenance data, and maybe even electrical can't see the mechanical drawings because they're just not set up to share the information or keep it up to date. And then, all along the spectrum, you might have some centralization, you might have some digitizing of old paper taking place. Way on the what I would call cutting edge or even bleeding edge, there are folks that have very elaborate systems. They have 3D models, students perhaps making 3D models of the buildings, links of the 3D models to things, integration with GIS, integration with CMMS. That's the exception though, not the rule. It's probably not the majority of campuses can afford that. Maybe some of the major universities, but not the smaller campuses. So I would submit there's some sort of optimized state, and it might be different for each client, that makes sense, that creates the lowest overall cost and the greatest benefit. And it's a mixture of updating technologies and processes to get things so folks are working more efficiently. So that's the one that I think that one could make a return on investment case for. And it will be different for each client depending on their scope, the size, and what they're doing today. So what we did when we created Facilify was made something that was a document management solution that made sense for facilities, for folks like engineers, maintenance, real estate, space planning, programming. dealing with the built environment. So things like room names, room numbers, equipment, building names, numbers, contractors, all that's built in, and you can find information that way. It's not some sort of file structure, file folder structure that only makes sense to the person that created it. Documents go in, and they're not only tagged by one, maybe a name of the contractor. They might be tagged by the contractor, the building it's associated with, the floor it's associated with, the trade it's associated with, the date. So you can get to this information a multitude of ways. If you don't know the date of the installation, maybe you know the contractor that did, so you could find it. Then there's also Microsoft SharePoint powering things on the back end. And Microsoft SharePoint, some of you may already have it at your campus. It's probably the most popular enterprise content management system out there. Unfortunately, it's not that friendly unless you do create a layer on top of it that makes it understandable for folks for the job they're doing. And that's what we've done with Facilify. So all the things like version control and archiving and permissioning is all built in from Microsoft. So this is also, we can customize it to your needs. Obviously, if you have wireless, you can get to this from anywhere with a web browser. Most of our clients have us host their solution in our data center here in Hamilton, Ohio, but it can also be client hosted. There's no per user charge. The value of these things comes from more people using them, so we don't try to limit access, throttle access by users. So, and because there's a Microsoft back end, it's easy to pass information to other systems. Say you wanted to set up a API to share with your CMMS or other system. So here's some recent clients. OSU recently created a $1 billion cancer center, and we're supporting that. Owensboro Health in Kentucky has our system in 5 of their buildings across several campuses. IBM data centers are using our solution. Madison Square Garden recently completed a $700 million renovation using our solution. So widespread adoption by folks like universities and healthcare systems or anyone else that's really concerned about keeping their documentation straight for their facilities and being able to keep it straight over time because their facilities are important to them. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into a demo and kind of show you what I'm talking about. All right. So if I logged into Facilify, this would be the first page you see. And you can see I can go to my facilities if I want to look up information, or I could go ahead and add new documents. If there's a new project came through, some in-house work was done, somebody updated some documents, it could be done there. I'm going to go ahead and show you what it looks like to enter the solution. And it's fully scalable. It was intended from the ground up to be a multi-campus solution. So if you had multiple campuses, you'd have a choice of what to pick. It's easy to pick, and you see how these are sort of icon buttons. That's because we created this to be useful on an iPad for folks in the field. At that point, I'll be able to drill into the building I want to go to. And here I have sort of the building interface. And I can go into contacts for this building. And this is free form, so if there's other kinds of contacts, easy enough to add. There's no customization needed, just type a new category. And maybe I need something from subcontractors. And specifically, I need something from the HVAC guy. Now, I don't remember their name, and you see these are alphabetical, so I can also sort by scope to pull these up. And here we go, HVAC. Now, this contractor will have current contact information, and there may be some notes. A service contract with McKinney's was purchased. There could be a warranty document associated with a certain project. And this is something that the trades personnel can get to quickly and easily, so people don't waste money spending money on something that's already been bought through a warranty. Very easy to access. Some other thing is I can go into the work that this contractor performed. This contractor did HVAC systems, so I'll simply drill into there. And if there's multiple things that they did, it will show. So this contractor put in some variable frequency drives, and here are the asset numbers for those drives, and I just keep drilling to what I want. And it might be that I need a startup document, I might need some doc drawings, it might be some product, whatever it is, O&M manuals, all that is associated to the asset in this solution. So it makes it very easy for somebody looking something up that might not know what project it was built in with or whatever. They just want information on the asset. The drawings is also meant for easy navigation. And this particular building looks like it has two sets of drawings, a record set and an as-built set. And there could be other sets. There could be a set from a renovation project. If that did exist, it would also be listed here. But this particular building is relatively new, only has these sets. I'll go in here, easy enough to keep drilling to the category I want, and I don't need to understand what the architect did, how they named things. It's all laid out here. And maybe it's something up on the this level I need to get to. Well, this will bring up a drawing viewer, and this is PDF, which the advantage of that is you don't need any special software. But not only do you have the drawing, you have intelligence built in. So I can do things like jump up and down floors to see drawings below and above. I can also look at related trades. So I might be on the architectural drawing, but really what I am most interested in is perhaps some mechanical or electrical equipment. That's easy enough to jump to because we've linked these. So I can go ahead and pull the electrical drawing up since I'm in that space and get to that. Now you'll also notice that this drawing has some equipment in here. These look like EG1, 2, and 3. These must be emergency generators. There's also an exhaust fan, laboratory exhaust fan information here. Well, the drawing is good, but what I really need maybe is detailed information on these assets. So we've built in navigation. What we've done is linked spaces to drawings and also linked assets to spaces. So we've created a database link of equipment assets to the drawings. So I can go over here and I can pull up under electrical. I have some transfer switches and generators, and I can pull that right up. It's going to pull up emergency generator information, the contact, warranty contacts, or detailed information with things like manuals if they were collected during the construction. So here's looks like there's some warranties that we have in here for the generators. So makes it very easy to find the information you need, navigating from the drawings or wherever. If there was O&M manuals collected, they'd be in here as well. So another thing is you see that there's a jump zone. This could be that this particular drawing is showing half a building and it looks like there's a break line here. If I need to look on the other zone, on the south zone, it's all linked to make it super easy and intuitive to get to. So we do a lot of the heavy lifting on this. We have folks that that's their job, to go ahead and go through drawings and extract information. So most clients don't have somebody that can really do this. And you see there's some other assets that are here in this south zone. I could pull that information up just as well for these. There's also information on the spaces here. So this particular penthouse is established in the database here, and I can click on that, and it's going to pull up the space page. And that space page is going to have the drawings for the space and the assets for the space. In this instance, there's also some pictures that somebody took in the space. And this keeps a very convenient place to keep all this information. So made to make things very convenient for folks out in the field. It allows folks that are supposed to go out and fix things and diagnose things to do that without spending all their time, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, looking through a plan room for something or having to contact somebody else to get the information. Some other things here, we have an important items feature, and this might be really dependent on the building. It might be hot button issues for a particular building or things that need attention. So maybe I have some assets in here, some particular contacts, certain drawings. These are the important items. It could be life safety drawings, fire protection, whatever. It would really depend. In a laboratory, it could be MSDSs, anything you want you could put in here. Supplemental media. This is a place you could have links to maintenance management system, CAFM. If you have a BMS, you can have a link here to log in. Things like training videos are becoming a standard deliverable on construction projects. Where do you keep all these organized so people can find them? If they're on a flash drive or a DVD, they're probably going to get lost. But put them here, organize them in a systematic way, and new employees will be able to take advantage of them. So systems and products is a way to organize information about equipment, but not only equipment, but things like finishes, door hardware, door frames, lighting, anything that needs to be documented for the built environment. So there's two ways to get to the information here. This is by building system. You can also use the CSI code, which a lot of the folks on the engineering construction side might prefer. Doesn't necessarily make sense to facilities guys doing maintenance. So I'll go back to system and drill into what I want. Perhaps it's a conveying system, elevators. I'm going to have my elevator information in here, my drawings, anything that I need. Certificate for that elevator. It's all pretty much anything I can get to here with a few clicks of the mouse. And that's the advantage of this. You can actually find things that you might need. So any other of these things here you can find as well. If I need to go to electrical, pull up anything here, emergency power supply, I have my transfer switches, my generators, all very easy to get to. This could be configured out by assets for major assets. You know, get your transfer switch information, anything. And it's all within one system. It's not like there's separate folders or anything like that. It's all in the SharePoint system. So other documents is a place where you can quickly upload things. Maybe it's not all configured the way I showed you, but you can just go ahead and pick a campus, pick a building, put in a category, and drag and drop information, and it'll be associated with the building, even if you haven't associated it with an asset or a floor. So anyway, our solution is really meant to make things very easy to collect the information about a building and keep it organized, connect it, let people take advantage of it, and keep it maintained. So it's a labor saver. Let's see, that's it. Spaces I didn't show you. I can actually go and configure buildings in here and drill into floors, and then if there's zones, drill into here, drill into the rooms, and like I said, I can find the drawings that depict that room, not just the floor plans, but electrical, fire alarm, mechanical, all the detailed information, as well as the assets in that room, and pull up detailed information on those. So, and you can go as detailed as you want. Put in as much information as you have about assets and keep them all organized and updated. And updating is pretty straightforward. I'm going to go to the updater screen here. And you see what we have is actually, whoops, let me go back here. I click on the little gear. I have, these are lists of drawings, lists of assets, lists of campuses, lists of floors, and you can open these and edit these almost like in Excel. The thing about it is, though, these are all interconnected with one another, these lists. So if I'm in here and I make a change to it, it's fairly easy to do. I can import and export data. If there's big changes, you might want to work on it in Excel and upload it. But this is all connected. So buildings are connected to floors, assets are connected to rooms, Drawings are connected to drawings. Drawings are also connected to spaces. So you can create the relationships here that allow the easy navigation I showed. And there's no limit to what you can put in here. We have standard columns. We could also add columns if there's something you think is missing. And we essentially built around about a dozen, 2 dozen lists that interrelate: floors, materials classifications, rooms, settings, building systems. So pretty straightforward. And if some of you might recognize this is a SharePoint interface. SharePoint 2013 is the engine to this that allows the easy navigation. So, but many users will never see the SharePoint. They will only see the main interface and not have to go into SharePoint. So you don't even need to need to know SharePoint to take advantage of this tool. So that's a quick overview of that. With that, I was going to go back to the slides and talk about some things, and then open it up for questions. So, you know, how does one get started with this? We have some clients that have been able to take advantage of our solution when they build a new building. It could be a major new construction effort, and there's a tremendous amount of documentation generated with that construction effort. And so we go ahead and participate in the closeout process for the construction. We can work with pretty much any general contractor. We'll go through the contract specifications. We can actually help you audit the contractor and make sure they've given you everything they have to. In the instance where it's not new construction and you simply are looking for a campus solution, it's a bigger issue. It's not really a technical issue. Frankly, it's an organizational issue, and we can help with that as well. The first thing is really make the business case. Why do we need this? This is a neat thing, but how does it help us? So the bigger the organization, the more people are involved in decision making. It's not just a facility manager decides they want to go ahead and do it and makes a decision. It's going to involve IT. It could involve a purchasing department. It could involve the various branches of planning, design, and construction that are all touching the documents potentially. Really what we can help with is come in, and we find that oftentimes nobody in the organization really knows what all is going on between planning, designing, construction, and perhaps others that are touching the documents. The design guys have a process, the folks in maintenance have a process, not necessarily speaking to one another, and nobody can really map out what is really happening and what the costs are. And we have different people with different systems on the same university, so we can help with that. We can come in and take a snapshot of the current people, who needs the documentation, how are they changing it, how is it being maintained, their processes, the various technologies that are being used. The engineers might have a CAD library they don't share with anybody because nobody else can use CAD. The O&M folks may have a PDF folder structure. That's great, but it doesn't ever get updated and you can't find anything. Maybe somebody else has an O&M library of 3-ring binders and electronic O&M manuals, and it's just all disconnected. Maybe somebody in purchasing has the warranties. Nobody knows. Oftentimes nobody knows where everything is. So we can come in and help folks uncover some rocks, and we'll sit with each constituent group, you know, engineering, facilities, real estate, document management, if that function exists at the entity. And oftentimes, frankly, it doesn't, and that's part of the problem. And go ahead and map out what's happening now. What's it really costing you to not know where all your documents are? What does it cost that on every work order, a trades personnel has to spend half an hour going out to the job site looking what type of light fixture is there and coming back and getting it from material control instead of actually being able just to look it up, or maybe even the dispatcher look it up and say, look, you need this kind of light fixture to be replaced out there. That's just a simple example. Something more complicated could be even worse. There's also the issue of emergency response. You don't know what you're responding to. There's always the issues of what's in the wall, what's behind the wall, where are things routed, and more often than not, people don't know where things are. So we can kind of map that out. What is the benefit? What is the true cost? That's something a lot of people just frankly don't know. So anybody in that boat would love to help. A lot of folks interested in that, getting that mapped out. So because frankly, they're not staffed to do that. They're staffed to run things and keep things running, put bandages on things, keep them running. So anyway, I hope there's some questions. I hope folks have some questions. I hope this inspires some maybe thought what you're doing at your university. Maybe you figured out a way to really get things under control. Maybe it's very people intensive. Maybe you have some technologies, or maybe this is something you're wrestling with. I'd love to hear your questions, and I'd love to meet some of you guys. I won't be at the CFTA meeting in Boulder, but I will be in APA. I don't know if any of you folks are there. So with that, Michelle, were there any questions that had come up from anybody?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that, John. There are a couple questions.
Okay.
First off, you mentioned the ability to tag documents within the system, which is obviously a very needed tool. Who can add tags to documents? How is that?
Well, we essentially have three classes of users. We have people that are read-only users, and these are folks that just using the tool to look something up. Then we have folks that have the ability to make edits, additions, deletions, and those folks with those edit rights can do that. They can tag things. They can go in there and add documents, associate documents to one another. And most of our clients, they're going to have 90%, 95% of their folks read only, and then 5% of the folks, maybe one or two folks that can make updates. And we'll provide specialized training for them on how to do that. And that last class is an administrative role, someone that can actually delete users or something in that nature, more of a system admin. But really anybody that can do it, that wants to learn how to do it, can do anything our staff can do here in Cincinnati.
Can you show a little bit about that? I have a question about who actually enters the data into Facilify. And it sounds like based on the user level, an editor can do that.
Yep.
But can you show a little bit about how data is actually entered and connections are made to a document?
Sure. I am not an expert on that. There's folks here that do that every day. But if I'm going to go here and try to make an example of it. So I'm going to go here into my drawings table, for example. And there's really two ways to handle drawings. One can overwrite drawings, but most of our clients actually don't prefer to overwrite that. They'll prefer to version a drawing. So they'll create a new drawing with an updated date, and then they can go back in history and look at it. So let me see if I can do a quick edit here to give you an example. And I'm not someone who does this every day, but if I had a drawing here that perhaps maybe it was identical in every way. This is it was a record set drawing. This is the drawing name. This is the what I'm going to call the trade category, drawing number, prefix, all these things. Maybe I had an update that was made because there was an in-house renovation, and I went ahead and updated the document. And I recommend to a lot of folks, if they don't have AutoCAD, go ahead and update the document in Bluebeam or something of that nature if you don't have the ability to republish it in CAD. And at that point, I would take this, I wouldn't delete it, I would go ahead and essentially copy this row. I would copy the row, and then I would change certain metadata. Let's see if I can, I'm not sure if I can, I'm not fully proficient in this, but essentially I would copy this row, and I would create a copy of it, and I would change the date, and I could leave the number the same and all these other things the same, floor and roof plans, and then I would have something that would overlay and actually be navigable, and I could still look back in history on that. So it's as simple as that. If I could get somebody to do a demo that does this all the time and show you how it was done, but it's as simple as manipulating this list here to do metadata markup on a document.
Do you need to have SharePoint in order to run Facilify?
You do. You do need SharePoint, and most of our clients have SharePoint by virtue of it's being hosted by us. So really most of our clients need is an internet browser. So they'll log in and do their thing and log off again. You don't need SharePoint in-house. You simply need you know, a browser to do everything here. So our backend in our data center is SharePoint. Now sometimes not that many of our clients, Owensboro is one example, has SharePoint on their own SharePoint server, and they've installed a licensed copy of our solution on top of their SharePoint. So you do need SharePoint. You can get it from us, or you can install it yourself on your own server.
Okay, well, tell us about security and how it's handled at a granular level by file name. Is that possible?
Yes, it is. You can do security at really any level. You can do it on file level. You can do it on folder level. Most of our folks have don't have an issue with because it's single client. I mean, most of our folks will not need to segregate people like, oh, most of our folks are not going to say, well, I want some people to see this building but not that building. But we can do security permissioning at really any level you want. We have oftentimes a request for, you know, somebody to come in and maybe it's outside third party or something like that. We can set up custom security or something that expires after 30 days if somebody needs that. But yeah, you can go very granular. The issue with being very granular is it's obviously a little more labor intensive to set up. But I mean, doing just by certain buildings or something like that is not a problem. We can do that by folder. So certainly, and you could have, you know, I don't know. We don't have too much of an issue with it, but it certainly can be done.
Okay, back to SharePoint. Is your system able to run on SharePoint via Office 365?
Not right now. Not right now. Right now, it does have to be in a hosted environment, meaning an instance of SharePoint. SharePoint 365 is something that you buy from Microsoft. You pay $5 or $10 a user a month, and it's just there. It's almost like Hotmail or something like that. But at this point, our Facilify needs to run on a instance, and that could be either hosted by us or hosted by you.
Okay. How much SharePoint server space is required for like a typical well-populated 100,000 square foot facility, for example?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Most of the drawings that we get, they're only around 1 meg or 2 meg each, and the biggest taker of space really is video at this point, training videos. But I would say, you know, rule of thumb, I mean, a 100,000 square foot building, it might be, it's not a huge amount. It might be 10 gig, 20 gig. So it's not a tremendous amount of space that these things need, especially if they are native content, meaning they were generated native from AutoCAD into PDF versus being scanned. So yeah, I think our biggest building that we have might be 70 or 80 gig, and that has a lot of video in it.
So how does that translate to hosting costs?
We usually will set up folks, we'll find out how much facilities they have and their storage needs, and we'll go ahead and work out a quote based on that. It really depends on what they're going to do. If they're doing one building or a multi-campus thing, if they're doing one building, they can add buildings to it, or some folks, if they have a whole campus they want to put in, we'll go ahead and give them a campus price. Most of our clients will give them very generous space for a building, maybe 100 gigs a building, so they never really have to worry about it. And we've never had anybody bump up against that. So, you know, it will just depend on the scope of what we're looking at. If it's you know, 20 gig or 200 gig, we can price that accordingly.
Okay, you mentioned I think I saw PDF files and you mentioned video files. How many file types are supported in your system?
Well, anything can be stored in SharePoint. Now, the issue is you need a viewer for any kind of content that's going to be displayed. So our solution has a native PDF viewer built in on the drawings, and everything else would have to be viewed on its own viewer. So most of our clients are fine with I mean, any kind of video, any kind of video, PDFs, Word doc, any kind of Excel, Word, any kind of Microsoft Office document is native to SharePoint, so that works fine. The bigger thing is AutoCAD documents. AutoCAD can be stored in our solution, but if you did want to view them, you would have to open them with a viewer on your computer, because we don't have a licensed AutoCAD viewer built in. Most of our clients are using this, are not doing AutoCAD updating. They're more of AutoCAD, you know, they're folks that are looking at PDFs. They're more on the maintenance side. So it doesn't become an issue, but anything could be in here, but it's the Microsoft Office, the video files, and the PDFs that this is really built around displaying.
Great. Does your system currently support being able to search by an OCR PDF?
Yeah, actually, one thing we do is we will OCR everything if it's not already native OCR. So in the past, 5 years ago or so, we would often be in a situation where it would be scanning content, and we would run an OCR solution on any content before we put it in, Adobe or other. These days, most everything is already native, so it already has OCR, but this is all R searchable, so let me put in something here. Hope there's a heat exchanger in here. This will search not only the web pages, but it will search the documents. It will drill through the PDFs, and I mean, if there were any Word documents or anything like that in here as well, it would search to that, but it will search and pull up everything in there. So yes. So I have some assets here that have heat exchanger in them. I have some drawings that have it, and these drawings are PDFs. So yes, these are being OCR'd. So let me see and pull this up. So somewhere in here it says heat exchanger. So yeah, the answer is yes. Just like I showed, nothing really escapes the search in here.
Okay, good. We have a question here about you showing a case where the user can click on a room on the architectural plan and find all the equipment or other related data associated with that room.
Yes.
The question is, does that mean there is data entry for every single room in a building, or was that done by a tag?
It is this particular one. Somebody has to go through and look at it. Somebody has to go through and see, hey, there's a there's a chiller here, there's a air handler here, and there's two ways we can do that. If we're furnished an Excel spreadsheet, we can put it in that way. If somebody has already created that list, it's very easy. If that doesn't exist, we can do that. And that list is something you probably, if it doesn't already exist, it's probably something you'd need for populating your CMMS, so you get some extra bang for the buck for that. And that is optional. That obviously takes time, and that's work. Not every client does that. Some clients just have our put drawings in. Frankly, what I recommend is make your contractor do that. Make your contractor create an Excel list that says where each piece of equipment is, because then you don't have to do the work, and you can just give it to us or put it in yourself. And then, I don't know if you guys have seen the talk about COBE, this Construction Operations Building Information Exchange, but that's a perfect application to force the contractor to do this, and then you're not paying someone else to collect it. So it's not automatic. It does require some review of the documents. The shame in it is that the engineer, the architect, the contractors, they already have these lists. You just have to get it out of them before they get off the construction site. So you'll see here, this is an asset list here. I mean, this is something you could get from a contractor before they leave. Let's see, rooms. These are simply two lists that are cross-correlated with one another. So yes, we do that configuration work, but it could be done with just get an Excel spreadsheet from whoever's doing the work, and it could be uploaded.
Well, you kind of answered the next question, which is, does your table relate to COBE, and or are they importable from a COBE compliant data schema?
Yes, yes. I've kind of followed that Kobe thing for the past 7 or 8 years. I've kind of watched that, and um, the data matches up. We can take a Kobe spreadsheet and load it into our system. You can export from our system, have a Kobe sheet. What I always tell folks is be very concise what you ask for Kobe, because there's in theory, if you say, I want everything, you don't really want everything. Maybe you want major MEP equipment over, $5,000 or something. There has to be some, the contractors have to be told what is needed, and then, if it's MEP, a rule of thumb we use, if anything that's tagged equipment on the schedules, we'll put that in as an asset, and so so I would just recommend be very concise when you scope out Kobe requirements for your contractors. Don't be vague. Don't say everything, but just tell them what you want for what kinds of equipment, and get in an Excel sheet from them, and we can load that up into our system. You can load it to CMMS and CAF them, whatever you want. Makes things a lot easier once the building is done.
Okay, here's another question for you. Does Facilify integrate or connect with IWMS systems like IBM's Triarega, Archibus, Manhattan, etc.?
Yes. Now, any instance of that, we would scope out and say, what is it we want this to do? And we would say, look, is there certain content we're going to keep in only one system, certain content in both systems, and we'd map out what is the system of record, if you will. And then we would say, okay, if it's updated here, it will push the information to this system. Because I could see something like equipment asset information being driven by the CMMS and maybe being pushed into this system for record purposes, or just to update it. And I can see this system, because this is a document management system, being the system of record for documents, and then pushing updates for references. Where I've seen this work together is somebody has a CMMS, it's telling them to go to work orders, and then they want to look up the O&M manual or a drawing, then it reverts to it makes a pointer to our system. So it's something we would scope out, but with the interoperability of the Microsoft SharePoint, it's a fairly straightforward thing to do once you map out what you want it to do. There's a sort of a very simple solution as well that doesn't take any software integration, and that is to simply have a link from something like a CMMS. A CMMS will have an asset page for things that have preventive maintenance called out. Have that go to the, simply drive to the asset page for reference purposes in Facilify. So EG1 would exist in your CMMS, but not have necessarily warranties and drawings. So this link here, this is a unique link that could simply be put in the CMMS and done that way. So that doesn't require any software interoperability per se at all, because this is a unique link. So different ways you could do it, but this is designed to be interoperable with other things.
Well, great, John. Thank you. I think that concludes our Q&A. So
okay.
I would call it a success, going 50 minutes, almost used up the whole hour. So again, thank you for both joining CFTA and taking time out of your busy day for this webinar. And if anyone does have any questions, feel free to reach out to John via the contact information on the page on the screen. And with that, we will conclude this webinar. And I hope that the last remaining 17 attendees out here today coming to the CFTA conference, and I hope to see you all there. And thank you very much for everyone who joined us today. And thank you, John.
Thank you.